What's going on, Kayleigh?
How's it going?
It's good to finally have you on the podcast.
We've been talking about it for like, what, a year?
Something like that.
It takes time.
Well, it's been really cool to, I mean, we met what, 3 years ago now? Something like that?
I don't even know when we met. It's been a while.
I think it was like 2021 or something like that.
Probably.
But it's been cool to see your journey and development and progression in everything that you do with Kayleigh's Law and all that stuff, from where it started to where you're at now and actually getting legislation passed and all that. It's pretty awesome.
I know. When I look back, what's happened in 3 years, and this being my fourth legislative session, it's crazy that how much has been accomplished in that 3 years just off of my pain and horrific story. And that's where, everything stemmed from.
So I actually don't know I don't know your actual story.
Most people don't.
I've picked up some pieces surrounding it, kind of been able to put a few pieces together. But I kind of wanted to get into it on the show today and just, actually hear what the process was, hear what the story, what the journey was to where you are now with Kayleigh's Law, legislation, all the stuff that you got going on. Because, I mean, not only do I not know it, but I'm sure listeners are going to be very intrigued.
Yes, and actually, if you Google my name, one of the top searches is what happened to Kayleigh Kozak, because I don't talk about it much because it is the reason I do what I do, but it's not the reason I do what I do, So my story in a nutshell is like so many others. And I think I've been on a couple podcasts where they're like, "Oh, you were raped." No, I wasn't raped. I was sexually assaulted. And there is a difference. And rape is actually, the lesser of sex crimes that happens. What happened to me is more common, and that's just sexual abuse or sexual assault. And what happened to me is, my God, it's so common. I just put out a story this morning. I feel like I put one out every morning about a teacher sexually abusing a student, and that is what happened to me. I was actually sexually abused my 6th and 7th grade year by my PE teacher, who is also my club soccer coach. So just happened to be the same person.
Was it a male or female?
Male.
Okay.
So we moved back to Arizona. I'm actually a native, and we lived in North Carolina for 6 years, and we moved back middle school. So that's a hard time anyways. And for your parents to just up and move you across the country, to Buckeye of all places, which was like nothing back then. And I didn't know anybody. And so to start middle school not knowing anybody, it was a lot. And so what's interesting, and I don't know if I've ever said this on a podcast before, but my mom had actually connected with my abuser, and I hate to call him that, but that's just what I'm going to refer to him as, had actually connected with him before we even moved back to Arizona, because I was so good at soccer. I loved soccer. Soccer was my everything. And so my parents wanted to make sure before we made the move that they had connected with a soccer club in Arizona that I was able to join. And when I say I was good at soccer, I was recruited for the West Coast Olympic development team when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted to be the next Mia Hamm. My dream was to go to UNC Chapel Hill. I wanted to be in the Olympics. That was what I wanted to do. And he took all that from me, So we moved back to Arizona. I was groomed. I was very much groomed. And if you look at the police reports and everything that's been put out, and even the court documents in my case, the thing that they touched on the most was the extent of grooming that took place that my abuser did with the communities, with the soccer club, with the families, just in the school and everybody. And the reason I touched on that is because that is what's so common. Sex offenders are these predators, are these some of the smartest humans that exist. Everything is calculated and intentional.
Well, they're predators.
Yes, and they prey on their victims. And it's not, they're not going to go, now we're seeing go into schools, but they're very intentional. They place themselves in these positions where they can manipulate the perspective that's shed upon them. So if they get caught, you have more people coming to their defense than going against them. And that is all intentional. They know what they're doing. And so I was sexually abused for 2 years, my 6th and 7th grade year. And I literally couldn't escape this man. I mean, he would call me out of class. He was my soccer coach. I was in club soccer. We had practice 4 days a week. My God, we were traveling once a month. My mom worked with him. So he knew. And again, I think that's something that is so overlooked when we have victims, especially when there's like teachers, they're setting themselves up in these positions. And I'll never forget, it was towards the end of my 7th grade year. Actually, no, it had to be 8th grade. So I was at his school 6th and 7th grade year. They rezoned in 8th grade. And so I had to switch schools. So the abuse stopped. He no longer had access to me anymore. That's the only reason that it stopped. And also I switched soccer teams. So he was the 90 coach. I'm 91 and there was a 92 team. And so I would kind of fluctuate back and forth with each soccer team depending on the tournament, what was going on. But I had decided to stay with the 92 team. And there were two very different teams. And it's interesting because I just recently learned in therapy, the reason I had a hard time fitting with the 92 girls was because I didn't know how to be their age. I only knew how to be in survival mode from being sexually abused. And so it was uncomfortable and foreign to me. And that's something I've learned. That's why I couldn't connect with them, because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to be 12 and 13 years old. And so he didn't have access to me anymore. And I saw him randomly, at the soccer field and things. And the last time I saw him before I turned him in was my 8th grade year at a club soccer tournament. And he approached me and I told him I hated him for what he did to me. And he told me if I ever told anyone that he would hurt me. And so that night I remember sitting in my parents' room and wanting to tell them, but I knew they wouldn't believe me because he set it up to be that way. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell him. I tried. I couldn't do it. And so fast forward to my freshman year, I went to Xavier and we were watching a video called Good Touch, Bad Touch. And we can get into that later too. People say, you don't know what good touch, bad touch is? Yes, I know. And yes, my parents told me if anybody ever touches you, you need to tell us. But when you're groomed and you are put in that position, you're putting the responsibility on a child. Adult choices are not children's responsibilities. And so everything they were saying in this video was exactly what happened to me, but I didn't know how to tell anybody. And so I didn't even realize I was turning him in because I didn't know how to say that he did something to me. And so when I turned him in, they called the police and the rest is history. But it took me over a year. I had delayed disclosure because I had to get out of that bubble to be able to feel comfortable enough to tell someone what had happened to me, for them to believe me. And when I turned him in, we did a confrontation call and it almost went too good. He admitted to everything and they arrested him the next day. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
It's a lot. I know.
And it's like kind of crazy is how similar, like it does, like you said, have a pattern where, you have, did you watch that Nickelodeon?
I haven't yet.
And
the reason I haven't is because I have to be in the right mindset to watch it.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So I've heard about it. I haven't watched it, but I'm assuming it's like a lot of the other ones that
now
are on.
With that coach, was that like a isolated thing or were there other victims as well?
So I'm the only documented victim. So I can't say that there are other victims for certain. I believe in my heart that there are, but no one else came forward. So I am the only known victim in his case.
Wow.
Yeah. So he admitted to everything. He was facing 25 years in prison. He had, I could look exactly, I don't remember, like 6 counts of sexual molestation of a child, luring a child for sexual exploitation. There was 8 counts total. So I'd have to look at what they were. But because I got really into that after everything resurfaced. But so I turned him in and my parents wanted to keep my life as normal as possible, which meant letting me stay in soccer. So we went down to Tucson for a soccer tournament that weekend that he was arrested, that following weekend. And the entire club had bought white shirts and wrote on them. And the shirt said, "We support our coach." And my parents said, "Do you want to leave?" And I said, "No, I just want to play soccer." And I've been in therapy for a few years. I just started going to therapy. I never had therapy when I was younger. And something I learned is like, as crazy as that was, I learned how to disconnect from that and be present in what was happening. What I mean by that is when you're locked in an office and a man is forcing him, a 31-year-old man is forcing himself on you when you're 12 and he pushes you out the door and you have to act normal, you learn how to flip that switch. And so I was able to not, I didn't care that they were wearing those shirts. I didn't care that they supported a child molester. I cared about playing the game. That's all I wanted to do. And my parents kept me in as long as they possibly could in the soccer club until they couldn't. And the reason that they ended up pulling me was because we had a club meeting. I say that loosely. It was supposed to be a support meeting. And it was actually my abuser's attorney and a private investigator. And they called me out in front of the entire club. And they said, "We know you did this. We know you're lying and we're going to get you." And my parents, they didn't let me go back after that, which understandably now as a parent, I can understand why. But one parent chased us out and come to find out the owner of the children's organization, the club soccer team, he actually bailed my abuser out of jail. And he bailed him out and my abuser lived with him until he was sentenced a year later.
Are you serious?
Yes.
And then all the rest of the parents were just like, "Yeah, that's okay."
I don't know that anybody believed that he did the things that I said that he did. Now, mind you, there was again a recording that they played in court. So all these people heard everything and they still painted me out to be this promiscuous, provocative 13-year-old. Like it was my fault. And that's what victims deal with. And it was awful. You know, the abuse in itself is awful. No one talks about what happens after you turn an abuser in. That is the horrific hell.
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine it's even like the situation itself obviously is horrible. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, being gaslit by not just your abuser, but like everybody around you saying like, you know, telling you that you're wrong, and not having, like, that's got to be the harder part, I'd imagine.
It was awful. I mean, because this was my family. We were together all the time. And these people were writing character references for him. Teachers at the school, I would leave my kids with him. And, you know, something that I can say, truly that I can say throughout this entire process is I stand in truth. He can have done all these things, manipulate everybody he wants, but you can't hide from God. And so you can lie to yourself, you can lie to everybody, but when you stand before him one day, you can't hide anything. So it's crazy because, you know, all that happened. They stood by his side. I want to say it was unbelievable, but it's not, because I guarantee most cases, especially that are the same, you know, kind of the same storyline, the victims probably deal with the same thing. And I've had to really work through it, especially after everything resurfaced in 2020. But so my parents, they ended up accepting a plea deal on my behalf because they didn't want to put me through any more trauma. And I don't want to say I'm not grateful for that. Even I think just recently my dad was like, "I wish we would have done things a little different. I wish that I wish we wouldn't have accepted this plea deal, because had they known today what they knew then, obviously this would be very different." However, because of the way that things have unfolded is why I do what I do and why I'm able to change what I have changed. And so, like I said, he was facing 25 years. It would have probably been a slam dunk case given that confrontation call of him admitting to everything. He didn't even skip a beat. And he even said in there things like, hopefully I learned from the mistakes that I made. I was 12 years old. And so it probably would have been a slam dunk case, but they didn't want to put me on the stand. So they accepted a plea deal that consisted of 6 months in jail and 2 terms of lifetime probation. Now, and they were also under the impression that he would be on the sex offender registry. So this is how what happens. So my parents thought, you know what, if he's on probation for his life, he'll be affected for his entire life. Like, he'll never be able to have a normal life, if you will. He'll have to register as a sex offender. Everyone will know what he did. And that's kind of where why they accepted that. So when my case closed, I didn't want to know anything. I didn't want to know if he was out of jail. I didn't want to know anything. And I didn't for a long time. And, you know, I call it my 13-year gap from the time my case closed to the time it resurfaced in 2020. So.
Wow. Just now, like, I didn't realize I was like gripping, like, had a death grip on the mic listening to that. That was.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So then I got a lot of questions.
I know.
But what happened in 2020 then?
So in 2020, my mom actually received a phone call from the Arizona Adult Probation Department. And I like people to understand that this is how this doesn't make sense. It literally doesn't make sense, but how out of the blue this was for me. The Adult Probation Department was calling my mom because they didn't have my information, even though I'm opted in for victims' rights, which is a total fucking joke, by the way. And she called me and she said, "Hey, the Adult Probation Department is looking for you." My first thought was, did I have jury duty and I missed it? That makes no sense. Not in the same line of anything. But I didn't, like, that's how out of the blue it was. And she said, "Do you want me to give them she told me it was regarding him." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Do you want me to give them your number?" And I said, "No, not till you know what's going on." So everything resurfaced. And my parents had given me my file with everything in it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they came back and they said, "Well, he's been good and he's completed his treatment. So he's eligible to have the terms of his so-called lifetime probation lifted." So to put things into perspective for people, I thought he was on lifetime. So I was shocked that this was even happening. Then my parents go to look him up on the sex offender registry. He's not on there. So we're like, wait a second. He agreed to be a registered sex offender and he's not on the registry. And when I got this phone call, my husband was working swing shift. I have 5 children. My youngest was a year and a half. It was, you know, my oldest at the time was 10. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so I'm dealing with 5 kids, have this happen. I can't even process any of this. And then and by the way, I'm not getting a phone call from a victim's rights advocate. I'm not getting a phone call from the state. I'm getting a phone call from my abuser's probation officer. So think about how, like, I can't, like, that's who is delivering me this. It feels like she's on his side and she's the one who's telling me this. And so I have so many questions, but my biggest concern is, what protection can I get a restraining order? And why is he not on the registry? So she responds to me and says, "Well, you can't get a restraining order because you have to have proof and grounds that you are in current danger. And he's a level 1 sex offender, so he's not on the registry." I have no idea what any of this means. I'm trying to process this all, you know. And then she says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to court in 3 weeks." That's how long I had to process this.
So you didn't get served or anything. They just called you up and said, "Hey, see you in court."
Yes, for that situation, yes. And so, small world stuff. My mom's coworker's sister was on the police department, so she kind of helped me. And then I was going through it. I was like, I'm going to court. I deserve to be heard. I'm not going to court. He doesn't deserve any more of my time. And I tried to sit, Cade, every time I sat down to write a statement, I couldn't. I could not write. I couldn't do it. It was like I just couldn't do it. It was such a dark time. And the night before, so it was Thursday before. So the third Friday I learned, the third Friday in Arizona, specifically in Maricopa County, is sex offender release day. It's a set hearing where sex offenders get to go and petition to have the terms of their probation modified and or completely lifted.
So third Thursday.
Third Friday.
Third Friday of the month
Mm-hmm.
in Maricopa County.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna make a note of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can show you the
I'll see.
courthouse where it's at.
Yeah. Is that like a county attorney thing, or is that just
It's a Maricopa County thing.
It's a Maricopa County thing.
Maricopa County.
Okay.
Maricopa County is such a lovely place to live, isn't it? Well, you don't live here.
No, I'm Pinal County all day.
So the night before court, I got a phone call from the prosecutor, who should have been calling me, by the way,
right?
Never did. Saying this is what's happened. I have to leave this at the discretion of the court. And I'm thinking, what? She's like, well, he completed his treatment. He's been an ideal probationee, so it's at the discretion of the judge. So you have to come. Like, you're all I have. So I was like, I have to go. If I go and he gets off, at least I can lay my head down at night and say I did it. If I don't go and he doesn't get off, then it was worth it, So I called my parents. I told them I was going. My mom was like, I'll be there. And my dad said, do you know how stupid you sound? You're one person. You're never going to change anyone's mind. And he didn't come. He actually went to a car show.
Nice.
So, yeah. With that being said, this was also very traumatizing for my parents. I can't imagine everything resurfaced for them. And none of us asked for it. The only person who asked for this was my abuser, So, and we can get into all that too, if you want. But, so I went to court. I testified against him. They did not lift his probation for other reasons, but I had said, this is the only protection I have. There's no such thing as post-probation protection. And after court, I was bombarded by 13 people because they're like, there is no such thing. There is no protection that comes after probation is lifted. And again, I don't understand any of this. And so I was like, I'm going to change that. And they're like, yeah, we're going to call it Kayleigh's Law. And I thought, oh, whatever. I don't even know what that means. I didn't know anything about politics. They're like, call your local legislator. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I didn't care about politics. And so, the next week after that, COVID happened and nothing else in the world mattered. And I could have gone on with my life and the rest could have been history. But that is not who I am. So that is not what happened.
And that's when you got into developing Kayleigh's Law.
That is, yeah. So obviously, the world shut down and no one knew what was going on. And I didn't know how legislation worked or session or anything. I knew nothing. I didn't know what party was affiliated with what color. I didn't know anything. And so in October 30th, 2020, I was in such a dark place. I was not okay. I almost did not make it because I was at home with 5 kids. The world was shut down. My husband was working outage, which means he works 6 12-hour shifts on nights. I'm having to keep them quiet. The parks were taped up, all the things. And I was 205 pounds. I was miserable. I hated my life. I did not want to live anymore. And October 30th, I woke up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to change my life. Today is the day. Today, I changed my life. And I started 75 Hard, and that saved my life. So Andy Frisella's program, 75 Hard, saved my life. And I also called my local legislator and demanded that they schedule a meeting with me. And I called until they scheduled a meeting. So we met December of 2020, and they thought, this sounds crazy. Victims always have protection. No, victims do not. And so we drafted a bill, and it dropped in and was filed in January of 2021.
Wow.
So
what is the bill? So Kayleigh's Law, as that gets drafted, as it gets presented, what does Kayleigh's Law entail? What does it do?
So the idea behind Kayleigh's Law initially was to give victims protection forever because they endure so much, and at the very least, they deserve protection that lasts for their entire life. And so I didn't know how to do that, so we just wrote it, and it actually went through the legislative process in Arizona and passed within 4 months with complete bipartisan support.
Wow.
Which is literally unheard of, by the way. And I didn't know what we were doing. Again, I was like, can I get that 4th grade pamphlet to tell me how a law, is enacted?
Yeah.
And I was down at the legislature for everything. I was like, I don't want to miss anything. And I actually had a surgery in January, went septic and almost died, and had to have a surgery in February. And I had surgery on whatever day. And I was going back for this procedure, and the senator called me and was like, hey, your bill is on tomorrow for COW, which is Committee of the Whole. I didn't know what that meant. I knew I was going to be there, though. And so I drove down to the legislature 15 hours after I had surgery just to stand in the gallery. I didn't even know that's what I would be doing, but I wanted to be there. It was so important that I was there because I was committed and I wanted to see every step and follow through. So it passed. Governor Ducey signed it on April 20th, 2021. And then I didn't know what happens then. Well, when does this go into effect? How does this work? Well, we have sine die, which is when session ends. And then laws go into effect 90 days after sine die. So once we sine died in Arizona, and I'm talking about this very freely. I didn't know at the time what any of it meant. But once we did that, I'm like, okay, how do we do this? What do we do? Well, we had put the traditional bill 1412 under traditional injunction. And in Arizona, that's only valid for 1 year. So the way the law was written was that a victim must serve their abuser every year.
Oh.
And I was like, you should have seen my face in this meeting. For anybody who knows me, you know I can't hide anything. I'm as blunt as they come. And I said, stop. Do not put another second into this. This is not, that's forcing a punishment onto the victim. This is unacceptable. Do not put another second into this. We have to redo the entire thing. Well, it doesn't work like that. Well, we're going to fix it because this isn't going to work. So, I sat down at my kitchen table and I rewrote the law. And I'm like, what are we missing here? How do we create a new chapter under this law? What do we do? So I added, I as if I was adding on to like a law, I added, I just rewrote it and I put natural. An injunction is valid for the defendant's natural lifetime, unless we had to have a caveat in there if someone didn't want the injunction. You just have to. Also, we wanted to make sure that was in there if there was any argument, unless the victim has died, because it's a natural life injunction. And so we wrote it. The policy advisors at the legislature, they accepted most of the language. They had to finagle, but we created entirely new laws in 2022, which was essentially, that was what the goal was, to have a natural life injunction. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, but it went through so flawlessly the first year. I was like, this is easy. No wonder. Like, what are people talking about getting laws passed? Yeah, it was not easy. The NRA got involved.
The NRA?
The NRA.
What did the NRA have to say?
Well, someone flagged that bill. I think it was, I don't remember the bill number, 1583. They flagged the bill and to the NRA, because if you have an injunction, what can you not own?
Firearms.
Okay, well, if you're a sex offender, you're also a
prohibited possessor.
Yes. So none of it was making sense. And one of the NRA's lobbyists was at the legislature, and the bill sponsor was really upset because they had went in opposition. They didn't just go neutral; they went in opposition. And so we had seen them. They didn't know who I was in the courtyard at the legislature. And she said, why are you getting involved in this? And she said, the lobbyist said, well, if an offender has their civil liberties restored and they go through the process and they won't be able to own a firearm if this goes into effect, a natural life injunction. And I looked at him and I said, so all I hear is that you're more concerned with providing a registered sex offender with a firearm than you are protecting the victim of that registered sex offender. He said, that's not what I'm saying. I said, that's exactly what you're saying. And I am so going to the press. And within 5 minutes, they recanted their opposition.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's what it was.
Why would they have opposition to that, though? It's like, okay, we have, don't get me wrong. When it comes to 2A, I'm as 2A
absolutely
as you can possibly get. The fact that I can't order a M240 Bravo off Amazon is a crime. But for them to be like, oh, hey, this guy is a sex offender, was a sex offender, might not be a sex offender down the line, so he should be able to have his rights restored, and this prevents that. It's like, why are you defending a convicted diddler?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why would you? Are you worried about losing your own rights if you are convicted?
It was a lot.
That's very strange.
Yeah. It was interesting to say the least. And they, like I said, they ended up rescinding their opposition. But then I got the reality of what it's like to get a bill passed. Now, I still had complete bipartisan support in Arizona. And simultaneously, I started working in Wisconsin, which was the second state in America to pass Kayleigh's Law. So we ended up passing it in 2022 with complete bipartisan support, where it was a natural life injunction. And so that was very different. And it would be served at the time of sentencing, but also in Arizona, it's retro. And that's important because right now we're the only state that offers the retroactivity, which breaks my heart, but I'm not going to pursue it I'm not going to not pursue it in other states because it won't be retro. The goal would be eventually to get it like that. But in Wisconsin, it's not retro, but still for the last 2 years at the time of sentencing, people can serve for this natural life injunction. So we call it an NLI. And it doesn't go through the traditional injunctions against harassment or the restraining orders because it's different. It's not the same. Very different process.
So when Kayleigh's Law, when you talk about protections for the victim, what does that look like?
So it really is one and the same as a protective order or an injunction. It's to prevent the offender from being able to contact the victim.
Gotcha.
I understand it's just a piece of paper because I get a lot of that. It's just a piece of paper. It's not going to keep them. You're right. Yes. However, prior to Kayleigh's Law, a victim's only protection fell within the terms of the perpetrator's probation status, not their sex offender status. So where this is very complex and very multi-layered. In Arizona, sex offenders are required to register for their life, regardless of what level they're determined. However, their probation is dependent upon the terms that they're sentenced to. So they can either be, a actual given time or lifetime. What's awful is they tell victims lifetime probation. And in all actuality, it's more like 7 to 10 years that is what a lifetime probation is. But they don't tell victims that in court. So, so by enacting this law, now a victim has this natural life protection until the way it's written that stays in effect even if the terms of the perpetrator's probation status are lifted. And because we can serve at the time of sentencing, we are avoiding that future re-traumatization and re-victimization. So it's really multi-layered. But here's the thing. If a perpetrator is on lifetime probation and they're on lifetime probation, they do all the things, I say that loosely, all the things to have their probation lifted. If Kayleigh's Law was not enacted, there would be nothing prohibiting them from contacting their victim. So even if they wanted to get on social media and send the victim a message and say, hey, I'm really sorry that I did this to you, you don't get to do that. You don't get to reinsert yourself in your victim's life. But with this law being enacted, at least there's a deterrent now that would help keep them from contacting their victim.
To where if they did contact, then
there's a consequence. Class 6 felony and a year in prison.
So it's a felony and a year in prison if they contact him.
Yes.
In any way.
Yes. And that was something I learned too when we redrafted. Well, that's only in Arizona. You have to attach a consequence to the law or it is simply just a suggestion. And so we did that too. And it's been a learning curve. And actually, this is, like I said, this is my 4th session and my 3rd year working on Kayleigh's Law.
Wow.
In Arizona to perfect it because we created a new law and we're never going to be bulletproof, but we can narrow the gaps. So last session, we enhanced Kayleigh's Law because we had a judge try to seal a natural life injunction and set it aside.
Okay.
So we had victims serve and then the judge tried to seal it. How insane is that? We have to put that in our law to prohibit a judge from setting aside this injunction. That's what we had to do. So we did that last year.
Why would a judge want to do that though?
Why do our judges do 90% of what they do?
See, that's what doesn't make sense to me. Is it's like it's pretty incriminating for whether it be a legislator or a judge. It's like, yeah, you know, this sexual abuser, this rapist, you know, yeah, you're guilty, but we're gonna change. It's like, hold on, why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
What is compelling you to have any, I don't know, remorse or like empathy here? Like, no, man, like anything that's not, you know, like we're looking at each other right now and like kind of on the same page. Like anything that's not that, right, is more than gracious to any one of these offenders.
100%.
Like there's a solution out there, but people aren't ready for it. And anything that isn't that solution is more than gracious to any one of them. And so it's like, if you're in any way like defending one of these people, like what does that say about you?
Yeah. Well, and we had some judges say that they were so for this law because they would be more inclined and more likely to lift the offenders the terms of their probation status because this would stay intact.
Right.
So everything else could go away, all the terms of their probation, except for protecting the victim, like prohibiting contact with the victim. But we had a judge try to do that. So last year we amended it to forbid that from happening. But that's where, and we can get into all that, I get so cranky and like pissed because people don't look at the laws and how they're written. And it's so then people think because the headlines say one thing and they're portrayed to be something they're not. And I don't like that. So when I work on bills, again, we're never going to be bulletproof, but I'm very word picky. I'm very then what? I'm very, trying to think of all the lenses and the perspectives. But so we did that. It passed. Governor Hobbs signed the amendments. I will listen. I would tell that woman thank you twice. Thank you for signing the amendments in 2023 because she did, which prohibited a judge. And then this last session, we had to amend Kayleigh's law to add stalking, voyeurism, and strangulation to be eligible crimes.
Strangulation?
Mm-hmm. So, because in the way when we drafted the law, we included every ARS code. Not every. We were specific in which ARS codes we include. We weren't broad, so we wanted to make sure. Because strangulation has its own ARS code, we had to include that.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, they weren't eligible. Same thing for stalking and voyeurism. And so we amended the law to add those 3 specific codes, and she signed it into law a couple months ago. So now victims of those crimes will be able to petition the court for the natural life injunction.
So in the campaign of Kayleigh's law, is this something that just goes like state by state? You guys work with the legislatures there and then get it passed, or is this something that ultimately could reach a federal level?
Well, so it's state by state, and the reason federal would be good to have a model. It would be nice to have a federal model, and then it would also help with the reservations. However, to have a federal sex crime is not as common as having, the state by state. And so we need to draft it state by state to ensure that victims in the state are protected under the state law. Gotcha. Again, having a federal model would be amazing. And I hope one day I can find someone on that level to draft a federal model. I haven't had any luck yet. A lot of...
who would need to draft that?
An elected official.
I might know a guy here in a few months.
Oh, well, maybe. I'll have to hit him up. But I've talked to people, and the thing is, like, I have all the groundwork done, and it's different in every state, and that's where it gets kind of hard because people ask me, what's Kayleigh's law? What state? What's sexual assault? What state are we in? What's a level 1 sex offender? What state? Because it's so different everywhere. It's not the same, and it's frustrating. But I do very extensive research to educate myself, especially on the states that I'm working in, so that I know exactly what we need to include and be specific with.
So I'm sure you're pretty plugged into a lot of victims who are benefited by this law.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen Kayleigh's law been put to work yet? Where someone under Kayleigh's law has violated that protection and then had to get...
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Well, that's a good thing.
I know.
That's good.
So no, not yet. I do know that in the first year it was enacted in Arizona, 1,009 victims were able to serve their perpetrator under the law.
Nice.
Yeah. So, which is, it's weird because I'm like, I don't know how to process that, because it's like, is that a lot? Is that not a lot? I don't know. I mean, it is. It's an insane amount of orders of, or lifetime injunctions, but it's hard because I'm living it, and so I don't, and I'll never see the benefits of all the work. I think that's why it's hard. So it's not like where you're building a car and you see each thing pay off. I don't see any of it, and I never will. I'll never see all of it.
Now, Kayleigh's Law is something that's kind of like, it's not retroactive, but it's responsive, right? So like the thing has to happen first.
Yeah.
And then Kayleigh's Law is there to make sure that it doesn't happen again after all the court dust settles. There's obviously a lot of this kind of thing happening all over the place, all the time, way too much, and it's happening more and more and more. We were kind of talking about it earlier before you hopped on, but like that Nickelodeon podcast, where it's very similar, where to your story, where it was a acting coach at Nickelodeon. Did you ever watch like all that or any of the Nick shows? Okay, so the Brian guy that would show up with the pickles, like the pickle tray.
Yeah.
So that's the guy.
Okay.
That's the offender. And he was this acting coach for Drake Bell.
Okay.
And same sort of thing, about 2 years of just constant abuse.
Yeah.
And this kid is about 13, 14. And, like the coach, he's working around with all the other kids, and he would never do anything because, he's gay. Like, who cares? You can't. And then, especially at the time, like, you're not going to go after somebody for that, especially in Hollywood, all that. And I think the first real, like, red flag was Drake Bell was over at his girlfriend's house, and this dude was just, like, calling nonstop. And this is, late 90s, early 2000s. So that's, like,
a while ago.
But it's like, calling nonstop. Like, everybody in the house hears the phone ringing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just, like, putting it on
cell
silent.
phone, yeah.
And so the mom of his girlfriend was like, hey, like, why is a grown man calling you 40 times at 8 o'clock at night on a Thursday? Like, that's not okay. And that was kind of the catalyst that led to, all this coming out. And then same thing. Yeah. Everybody in Hollywood started writing in letters of character letters in and supporting this dude. And that's really what led to, I don't know, like, if you paid attention to the actor, but like, he ended up kind of getting out of the industry a little.
Yeah.
But very similar thing.
Sex crimes are the most common and the most relatable and the least talked about. And our system is not for the victim at all. And so I don't blame victims for not coming forward. I don't blame, like we had talked about earlier too, no one talks about what happens after you turn an offender in and the hell that comes from that. And not only that, the later trauma, which is what I'm currently living in, and how the way that the laws are written, how it affects victims so drastically later on in their life. And I thought, I was thinking a couple months ago when I was talking to my therapist about it, why is it that people feel this like need and this sense of urgency to like help offenders? Or I don't know the right way to word that. What brought that forth was all the CCV stuff and exposing CCV and how they allow sex offenders to do all the things. But I think it's because an offender, after they're a sex offender who's been convicted, like their lives, we can physically see how their lives are still being impacted, right? Like, oh, they can't go here, they can't do this, they can't do that. Like you can see the actual struggle. Whereas a victim, you don't see the I can't think of the word I'm looking for. You don't see how that trauma is still following them. It's not visible, but it appears that the offender's life is still being impacted and the victim's life is not. And so, because I never understood, you see these offenders have endless resources and victims have nothing. It's awful. But I think it's because it's just what it appears to be.
Now, especially since like 2016, this really became a thing. But now there's there's been a paradigm shift, and it's a lot to do with like Donald Trump, where you have a lot of boys who've cried wolf on like Donald Trump, where it's like, oh, there's all these allegations that come out, and it really is a toss-up as to whether those are real
Valid
or not.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
About in general?
In general,
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, it is hard, and it sucks because for those of us that are truly victims, and the whole like Me Too movement, get out of here. Like that, but there are real victims in that, but then there are also not real victims.
Right.
And so I feel like it is hard because you don't know where to draw the line. And I think that there is a mix, and there will always be a mix, and some people we just won't know, and some are valid and some are not. And I think it's been like that for years. I think that what we're seeing now, like today, is a full circle. So like 20 years ago, more like victims actually started to come forward. Charges were actually being pressed, for these predators. And now what we're seeing is like the later effects, whether it be for the victims or in the system for the perpetrator. Example, sex offenders being able to get off their so-called lifetime probation in Arizona. Now that only pertains to Arizona. We're one of the, I'm not going to say that. It's different everywhere, but Arizona is the only state that operates under these sex offender requirements the way that they are. We're our own, we do things our own way. We are the only state that does things the way Arizona does. And it's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
No, California has better sex offender laws than Arizona.
Well, there's more sex offenders there.
Doesn't matter. They still have better laws. They have 85,000 registered sex offenders. We have 16.
Gosh. There's only 16,000 sex offenders in Arizona?
Registered, yeah.
Oh, wow.
DPS will tell you we only have 9,000. And that's because they don't put level ones on there.
So what differentiates like a level one? How many levels are there?
What state?
Arizona.
3.
There's 3.
Yep.
So what's classifying the different levels? Like if you're, like what's level 1? Like flashing in the parking lot, and then the level 3 is the BTK killer?
Opposite.
Opposite.
So could be, I should say. So in Arizona, we own a 19-question general risk assessment.
Okay.
So in Arizona, you're charged, convicted, sentenced. So this is how I like to explain it. Think of it as like a highway, like a 3-lane highway. And then think of an off-ramp. Your risk assessment that determines what level you are is its own area. So think about getting off these 3 lanes. It's 19 questions. It is a point-based questionnaire. The lower the points, the lower the risk level.
Okay.
So you would think someone who's, we're not even going to say pissing in public, because I get so tired of when people, I'm not saying it hasn't happened before. It's hard enough to prove a crime, let alone peeing in public being a sex crime. So we're going to say someone who's actually masturbating at a park.
Sure.
A public park.
Right.
They are actually, we'll even go as far as someone got it on camera.
Like the classic creeper in a trench coat.
Yes.
Like,
masturbating behind a tree.
Sure.
Okay. So in Arizona, we have this 19-question general risk assessment, and it's a point-based system. And so 3 of the very concerning questions on there was the victim a male or female? Female is 0 points. Male is 3 points. Both genders is 5 points.
Both, as in like they're
if your victims are victims are of gender or male, if there's male and female present, or male and female victims.
Gotcha.
I was really bitchy on the legislature one day, and I said, well, what about the trans kids? Where do they fall in this? They didn't like that, but it's true. They didn't like that I said that. And then, okay, so another question is, was the victim acquaintance or a family member? Family member is 0 points. Acquaintance, or whatever word they use in there, is 5 points. And then how many known victims? 1 victim is 0 points, plus 1 victim is 10 points. So if you have an uncle that's raping his 14-year-old niece, 0, 0, 0.
Low risk.
Low risk.
Level
He's
3.
more level 1.
Level 1.
Level 1. That's the lowest risk. So level 1 is the lowest risk, level 2 and level 3.
Wow.
And if you have the guy who was legit masturbating at the park, well, there was little boys and little girls playing, 5 points. There was more than one victim, 5 points. They weren't family members, 5 points. That person is more likely to be a higher risk level than the uncle who was hands-on physically raping his niece.
Interesting.
It is. And we are the only state that operates under that.
What do most other states, like what would you say is the most common, like, scaling?
So most states for sex offenders, they follow SORNA, which is the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act. It was put out. It's a federal like guideline that they use that most states follow. It is different everywhere because, again, what sexual assault is in Arizona is not the same as Mississippi, is not the same as New York, is not the same as Florida. The definitions are different. The codes are different. But SORNA goes off of the crime that was committed, not a point-based system. So, like, for example, in Arizona, I worked on it for 3 years. We just had a bill signed that is very specific to codes, the DCAC bill, and we can talk about that. But under SORNA, Arizona wasn't including our most dangerous crimes to be listed on the public registry. So you can commit the most dangerous crimes in Arizona, and because of that point-based system, you can be a level 1. Now, in Arizona, if you're a level 1, you are not required to be listed on the GPS public registry. You also don't require community notification. So you're protected. You're a protected offender, which is why when my parents accepted the plea deal, they were told he was going to be a registered sex offender. They were never told he wouldn't be on the registry, the public registry. My abuser's level 1, so he's not on the public registry.
It would make more sense if it was just a single point system where it was like, did you do this? And then it's like, yes. There you go. If not, then don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, it's a money grab. We could put one of those boards up. The assessment, getting off probation, being assessed, psychologist, all that. We could have one of those boards with the string and the, connecting everything. So Arizona's the only state in the nation that owns this risk assessment. And
it's a money grab.
Mm-hmm, according to SORNA, Arizona is failing 8 out of the 11 federal mandates. We're failing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Because we go off of this point-based system.
Like, that just doesn't make sense.
I know.
So,
but people don't know.
People don't know.
They don't know.
People don't know.
And
People
I'm
of Arizona
screaming at the rooftops, and not only am I screaming at the rooftops, I'm actually writing policy to fix it.
To where it would get rid of the points, or just
so we can't. I try to think of it like we can't get to the top of the mountain with one step, right? Like we have to take multiple steps. And so I think the overall, actually, I would like to implement Alabama's sex offender law. In my opinion, Alabama has the best sex offender laws in the nation. Like, you are required to register as a sex offender for life. You cannot get off no matter what sex crime you've committed. They do DNA, they do driver's license marks. Alabama has the best sex offender laws in my opinion.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And is it like, do they have a tiered system as well? Or is it just kind of like a...
No, they do have a tiered system because you can't treat all offenders the same, as painful as that is for me to say. Legally, I understand why. But regardless of the tier system they're still required to register for life. Whereas under SORNA, you have 10-year, 25, and life. So if you're a level 1 sex offender under SORNA, it's only a 10-year requirement that you're required to register and that you're on probation. Then you're off. Level 2 is 25. Level 3 is lifetime. So in Arizona, we've started kind of taking off small pieces because we can't implement it as a whole. We're actually going to have an ad hoc committee at the legislature pretty soon here. It should start to kind of dig more into this, but it would be really hard. No, it wouldn't be. We can, but because of our administration, it would be really hard. That's what I mean, our current administration. Mm-hmm. So what can we do in the meantime to where we're kind of just shifting pieces and moving over? So in Arizona, You can be a level 1 sex offender who has been convicted of a dangerous crime against a child. Would you agree that's the worst sex crime?
That's pretty bad.
You can have committed a dangerous crime against a child and be a level 1 sex offender, which means
you don't have to tell anybody.
Yep. So your next door neighbor could have been convicted of continuous sexual abuse of a minor.
Well, now I'm going to have to go ask him.
Well, yeah. No, you don't ask him. You ask him to see his license. Because
it'll say on there.
No, it doesn't say on there. But so those neighborhood searches you do, level 1s don't show up on there. So those red dots that show up if you're level 1, they're not on there. Oh. So those, they aren't on there. So we have the DCAC bill that we call it that was just signed into law, actually. And this would put an offender that's committed a dangerous crime against a child, regardless of what risk level they've been determined on the DPS public registry. And so once we sign die and the law goes into effect, DPS has 15 months to put every level 1 with the DCAC on the public registry.
Gotcha.
And that took me 3 years to get that passed.
Why are they trying to make it so hard? Like, it just does not make sense to me. How do you defend even legally, paperwork, whatever? How do you have any compunction for sympathy for any of these individuals? Where it's well,
I don't know.
It's
awful. And what's scary to me is that we are being desensitized to the severity of this, because every day we're seeing teachers that are being arrested for sex crimes with students. And then what happens? It's becoming so normal. You're now desensitized to it. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal. Oh, there was another one. It's a huge deal.
How often do you think that it's I don't know, at some point, this might be controversial, especially with the teacher thing. Do you think that there are, especially in high schools, do you think there's any consensual situations where the teacher ends up getting raked over the coals? Or do you think they still have it coming?
Well, I don't think anybody has it coming anymore, honestly, regarding this topic. I think that everyone's getting off easy, all these offenders. I think that it is hard enough to get an actual case prosecuted, let alone one that was consensual. I also think that media pressure and analytics and view, I think that plays a huge part in it.
Young female teacher, high school senior, high school, female teacher, senior male student. That's not really going to be looked at as nobody's clutching their pearls.
I know, no, and then you have the other side. I post stuff. I just posted a female teacher today in Wisconsin that was. I mean, it was a 24-year-old and a 5th grader, so that's totally different than what you're saying. But there was a case out here on the west side. 7th grade teacher was having sex with her 7th grade student, and it was awful. She was 28, he was 13, actually sex, they were actually having sex. And people are like, oh, that kid's so lucky. That kid is going to be fucked up forever. In so many areas. It was so, but high school, it gets different. And then also under the ARS codes, what are we looking at? What state are we at? In Arizona, if you're 15, 16, 17, you're kind of in this gray area. And the age of consent changed in 2012, I believe. It used to be 16 and now it's 18.
Okay.
So I'll have to look at that. But so...
it used to be 16?
The age of consent, I believe it was 16, yeah. So... it's ever changing. You have to keep up. But it just depends. And so, the Mr. Orange, you saw that, right?
No.
What? Yes, you did. You just don't know it. The Suns guy, the Suns fan who was always dressed up in all orange. Okay. And he was a teacher at a school and he was just arrested for sex crimes.
Nice.
Yeah. So he fled Peoria and got arrested in Goodyear. But you can imagine people were sending me his story and they're like, oh, he was arrested for child sex trafficking. And I was like, something isn't adding up here. So I always wait until their charges are filed in the court system.
Right.
Always. I don't go off of what Fox 10s. I don't give a shit. I don't go off of any of that. He was charged with 4 counts of attempt of luring a child for sexual exploitation. Attempt.
So he didn't actually do anything.
Well, no, he probably did, but he was attempting to get them. He never actually got them.
Gotcha.
Well, I don't know that for certain as what, but I would assume. And then they did a class 3 felony instead of a class 2. Well, I would assume it wasn't a DCAC. Well, no, I wouldn't assume. It was not a DCAC. So they were 15, 16, and 17-year-old high school victims. And it was his first offense. So I bet I'm going to assume he gets like a year on probation, if that. And we'll even see if he has to register as a sex offender.
Yeah.
So like to answer, do you get what I'm saying? Like with your question, like it's just so hard. It just depends. Like it just depends. And it all goes back to the ARS code.
So, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about is pretty like defensive, right? It's reactionary. It's like, okay, this happened. Now what?
Yeah.
What about playing offense, getting ahead of it? Like, as not only as a victim, as a mom, as a person who is writing these laws and actually changing people's lives, right? You've had over 1,000, over 1,000 victims have served their abusers, right?
Yeah.
How do you catch it? How do you see it? Because a lot of the times, like you said, like they're trusted people in the community. They are upstanding citizens and teachers and trusted. And so how can you spot it? Not just like spot an abuser, but also spot potential victims. Like, hey, little Johnny's acting strange. I might want to look into this relationship here.
Yeah, I always appreciate this question, but I think it's really hard too because I feel like, and you tell me, I mean, especially like with what your dad does too, you know, like I was always taught to look for the creepy guy in the van. Mm-hmm. That's who you stay away from. My parents never told me that a trusted position, not that they would word it like that, you know, that a charming, that the good guy, the attractive, and I don't mean just physically, I mean the attractive human who's got a college degree. Yeah. And actually what's like, to give you an idea, most people that knew my abuser labeled, like they said, no, he's so charming. Like, and so we have been, that's how I was taught to look for the creepy guy in the van. No one's talking about the charming narcissist or the charming predator. If you went to one of those third Fridays, those court dates, and you didn't know where you were showing up to, and you got off the elevator in the lobby, you would think you were at an audition for The Bachelor.
Really?
Dressed to the T, clean cut. The thing I remember the most was the smell of the cologne, like, because it's not who you would think. Like they're not. There was like one guy who was like, ooh, that guy's a little creepy.
So it's less Jeffrey Dahmer, more Ted Bundy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so I think that we have been conditioned as a society and taught to look for the creepy guy. No one's talking about the charming narcissist.
Right.
Also,
the actual predator.
Yes. Also, I think that we have been conditioned to trust titles and entities. And that is the worst thing that we can do as parents. Because, you know, oh, it's your teacher. Like, you know, if your child is telling you someone makes them uncomfortable, you listen to that. Like, you don't negate their feeling and their intuition, period. You listen to that. And maybe they're overreacting. However, I would rather be more aware of my child listening to their intuition if someone makes me uncomfortable, than watering that down and then them feeling like then something happens and they feel like they can't tell me because I just told them that it was nothing. Oh, no. He's your teacher. He would never do anything. Oh, that's your doctor. Like, he's just making sure you're okay. Oh, no, that's your gymnastics coach. He would never, you must be confused. Like, he's a good guy. So I think that teaching our kids, it doesn't matter what the title is. It doesn't matter what the entity is or the location or anything. Like, that doesn't hold any weight anymore. Like, even if it's a pastor. And that's the other thing too. Now, look, we've seen all these, we call them position of trust. Predators are smart. They're going to go in where they can have that automatic
right
trust without question. Like it's all intentional. It's so intentional. And so I think being on the offense, it's really hard because you don't, I don't know, like judging, you know, it's hard. But I would say intuition and gut. And if your child says someone makes them uncomfortable, you listen to that. You do not question them or make them feel like there's not a reason, if that makes sense.
Now, does that play into like grooming? Because I've heard a lot about, I mean, that's been a hot word. It's been thrown out
Grooming?
a lot, grooming.
Yeah.
But I don't know if because I mean, like I am I don't want to say I'm the last kind of demographic to be a victim of something like this. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe I don't know. Maybe I walk into the wrong pawn shop one day. I don't know. But, you know, as a 6'2", 200+ pound dude, like it's never like I've never really seen myself as like I'm not exactly a soft target. Like no one's gonna look at me and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take advantage of that guy right there. So I don't understand. Like it doesn't really grab me. Like, oh yeah, like that guy was grooming me or that guy was being creepy.
Well, but it's not supposed to be creepy. That's the thing. Okay, so because I just wanted to pull it up to make sure I'm right. So when you're talking about grooming, there's stages of grooming. So targeting the victim.
Okay.
A lot of predators will go after, don't shoot the messenger. This is facts. Will go after weak, vulnerable moms.
Okay.
Who don't have the dad or their husbands are not involved or their husbands are absent because there's a window of opportunity. So they target the victim. They target the victim. They target the family. Then they move into gaining trust. It starts they're not just going to like, I mean, yes, it happens where someone just, you know, kidnaps somebody and rapes. Again, that's like less but when we're talking about grooming specifically, they're going to gain the trust. I always like to use the example of, so let's say, we'll use a church. Let's just use a church. And we'll say Bob is a predator. He is sexually attracted to children. He is on the prowl. Nobody knows. Most clean cut. He's not going to go volunteer in the kids area. Why would he do that? Think about it. Because the kids are there. Mm-hmm. Well, kids are easy. He can manipulate the kids easy. Who does he have to work harder to manipulate?
The parents.
Exactly. So Bob is going to be more likely to volunteer as a greeter. And Bob is going to put in his time greeting at the church. So every Sunday, he opens the door. Then he sees this family, this mom. She's got a couple daughters. And every Sunday, you know, slowly, oh, hey, you know, well, welcome. So good to see you. The next Sunday, something. Then the next Sunday, oh, I didn't catch your name. Then the next Sunday, there she is with her daughter, never sees a husband, no ring, nothing. Even if the husband is there, we're just using an example. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, a year is that, you know, slowly, oh, your daughters, how old are they? You know, then she says their names. Then he looks them up online or looks them up in the church. You know what? It's so slow. They are so patient. They're so patient. And then they target, they gain the trust of the family, they gain the trust of the victim. Then they start with, I care about, they feel the need. Oh, I care about you. I see you guys have a game this weekend at church. I'll come watch, you know, it's so slow. And then they act. Then what happens? Then they get turned in. And who all runs to Bob's defense?
Everybody.
Because I saw Bob every weekend. He was so nice to me and my family because he worked overtime to put on a facade and make everyone feel like he noticed them. Or, oh, yeah, he talked to my daughter. Oh, yeah, he knew my name. But he crossed the line with one or two while working to make everyone else think that he would never do that.
It makes it worse.
Yes.
It's like it'd be one thing if they were just like they were just using all lizard brain and just acted out like you know, sporadically. It's like this uncontrollable, like almost like you think of like how serial killers are depicted.
Yes.
Like if you watch like American Psycho, how all of a sudden he's just like loses his grip, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that these guys are taking years
Mm-hmm.
to plan out, it's like, dude, it makes it worse. Like, how do you not bring that up in a court and just be like, listen, this is how grooming works. We have very well documented histories of this
Mm-hmm.
and how it works with the victims and all these victims and how it worked with them. Like, it's almost textbook. It works the exact same way
Yeah.
every single time. And how methodical you have to be and how deliberate you have to be and how like truly predatory you have to be, because it's like, dude, like you are doing that with every intent. Like, you know exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
You have full intention with what you're doing, and then you execute on it. And it's like, how can you just be like, you know what, probation is fine? It's like, you've clearly demonstrated that you are, I mean, not like that. I don't know. There's a lot of spectral things with like psychopathy and whatever, but it's like, dude, you're not okay. Like, you're not allowed to, you can't play with the class.
That's why I say sex offenders don't make mistakes. They make choices, very conscious choices.
Yeah.
There is no mistake.
Peeing behind a bar, that's a mistake. Like, that's like whatever, dude. Like,
It's a choice, but
it's yeah.
but no, I'm serious. Like, people are like, "Oh, they made a mistake," when there is no mistake, especially when it's a child. That's not a mistake.
Yeah.
That is very intentional. And they try to make it out that they made a mistake and they didn't.
Oh, that's chilling.
I know. So
That's chilling.
it's a fun topic to be in.
Okay, so this is, I'd be curious to your insight on this as well.
Okay.
Because there seems to be an epidemic of this. Now, like, I get it. Like, there's a lot of things here, but I have noticed everyone's noticed in the last few years, the LGBT surge of, like, not just like gay kids, but all the tranny stuff and all of this weird confusion. How much of that do you think is coming from like victims that just are going unreported?
99.9. I mean, 100%.
100%.
That's what I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess to be safe, I'll say 99.9.
You got to give them a little bit of
There's
that.
one. Yeah.
There's one actual gay kid out there.
Yes.
Who wasn't abused.
Yeah. Well, especially with the LGBT, whatever. I think that, like, again, sex crimes are the most common and the most underreported. And I think that is a driving thing. Like, they don't get the help that they need. And I think actually a lot of them were probably sexually abused or traumatized before they even knew what was happening.
Right.
And so it does affect them. It affects their brain. It affects everything. And it is a very, I think it is a big part of that. And I personally haven't met someone, not gay, but trans or identity, whatever, if they're gender confused. I don't know how to put that, but that hasn't been sexually abused. I personally haven't met.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I have not met someone who hasn't. And I think it's a trauma response. That's my opinion.
It's been very interesting because, like, I guess we're the same generation.
Are we?
Yeah.
I don't know what generation I am.
We're millennials.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like right at the cutoff, but like high school, right? Because we would have been in high school at the same time.
I don't know. Wait, what year did you graduate?
15.
No.
When did you graduate?
10.
Oh, okay, so 1 year ahead,
Yeah.
whatever.
But yeah, close enough.
Yeah, it's the same group of kids, right? But right, growing up in the East Valley, very, very strong LDS presence there. I think there was 2,000 kids in my high school. Over 50% were LDS.
Okay.
Which, I mean, makes for, like, there's a lot of really, really good benefits to that kind of community.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how it was not a thing 10 years ago. Was not a thing. But now, right, just from my graduating class, let's say like 2 years before me and then like 2 years after me, there was probably about 30 dudes, 30 guys my age who were LDS guys, who were good kids, like went to church every Sunday kind of guys, even served missions, like served church missions.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, like, hey, totally gay. And you're like, what?
Really?
Like guys with families, guys who with kids are coming out and they're
Really?
like, yeah, I'm gay. You're like, that's weird, bro. Like where is this coming from?
I think.
And then you know, further divulgence into alphabet soup where you get into, you know, dressing up in furry costumes and
Yeah.
chopping your nuts off, but that's a whole different thing.
Yes, it is. And I think too, and this kind of, I mean, we literally probably could talk all day, but it also is a trend right now, and it appears to be like a type of fulfillment. Like, oh, I feel so empty in my life, or I don't feel like I have meaning or purpose. And so, oh, look, this person who is trans or whatever, look how happy they are. Look at how everything, like, look at all the support they're getting. I want that. And so it's a mind fuck. I don't know. That's what I think. It's so much bigger and
Do
deeper.
you think it's a psyop? It's not just
Yes.
kids getting diddled.
No, I think it is. I think it's a combination for sure. For sure.
Well, it's like a set piece, move piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that. And I think that I think like most things, because it appears to be I think it's a trending thing right now, and it appears to be this movement and this thing that people they're running to it because they're, I don't know, broken in their own lives. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to divert the conversation to go there.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes into the minor attracted persons and that shield, the social shield they're trying to put up there.
Yeah. And that is another way that it is a shield, and it's a way to condition us to accept their behavior as normal and their attraction as normal. Let me ask you a question. Can you therapy the gay out of somebody?
I have probably less of a traditional view on this, which is surprising. But here's my thing, right? I was a good boy. I waited till marriage. You know, my wife is my one and only.
It's amazing.
And but that being said, it's like I'm a dude. At the end of the day, I'm a dude. I am a dude with the same needs as every other dude.
Yep.
And you know, I was able to handle myself. And, you know, being a very religious person, I understand the cost benefit to keeping the commandments, keeping covenants,
Mm-hmm.
being faithful and virtuous, and keeping your eye on the prize, having an eternal perspective. Now, I'm not saying that it makes things easier for individuals, but, you know, for a guy who comes out and he's like, hey, listen, I am attracted to men. I like guys' butts. They drive me nuts. There's no fault in that. I don't think. I think that it's like, hey, listen, bro, if that's what you're into, that's what you're into. That's not inherently sinful, right? Because we're going to go off morality. Morality, like if you want to get real, really expand it out, right? Morality breaks down to theology and what is, our perspectives of good and evil based on being what is like righteous and wicked and sinful, whatever.
Yeah.
Being attracted to a dude, like a dude being attracted to another dude, is not a sin.
Okay.
What is a dude having sex with another dude. Not because and not for the reason you think either. My personal belief is that marriage, sex is reserved for marriage.
Okay.
End all be all.
Yep.
Marriage is between a man and a woman.
Okay.
And God. That's it.
Yep.
It's a covenant that you make. So anything that isn't that is in the same boat. Doesn't matter if you're hooking up with the chick from the bar or the dude from the gay bar. Same bucket.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's the sin, is breaking the law of chastity outside of the bonds of marriage.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like being attracted to boys, like wanting to kiss boys, like, okay, man, like I get that. Like, I don't get it, but
Watch how you say that.
I kiss the homies goodnight.
Someone's gonna take that one clip.
I get it. Hey, listen, I was airborne infantry, man. We're all gay and retarded. But like, there's a lot of we'll say unvirtuous thoughts. And I mean, like, I was airborne infantry. They ask you on the survey, mental health survey all the time, do you think about hurting people? Like, I don't know. Is it my job to?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and there are things like that where you're like, oh man, I'd love to just like look up that sex offender registry and just go address to address because I know they're not armed and I know there's nothing they could do about it. Not virtuous. It's not necessarily like, I mean, you could get into whatever theological debate, but like, I'm not actually doing anything about it. It's like probably not the best thought to be having. But thinking about putting a pedophile into a wood chipper doesn't make me a murderer.
No.
Same way, like if David Archuleta wants to kiss boys, like, doesn't make you a homo. Now, if you start kissing boys, like that's a little gay.
Yeah.
And, so on and so forth. Now, the tranny thing is a whole different can of worms that I got very strong opinions on. But,
That's what I'm saying. We could talk all day.
Yeah.
I mean, we could. But back to my question, can you therapy the gay out of somebody?
I think you could therapy someone into not acting on their physical things. I think you could therapy someone, like you could, and I don't want to say therapy someone out of it, but you can give someone the mental resources and tools to compose themselves, to bridle their passions, and to rise above that, whatever instinct they're feeling. And that's what, I mean, when you really break down like what religion is about and what the Bible teaches and what the atonement of Jesus Christ is about and what all the commandments and everything is about. It's about putting off the natural self to become like God.
Yeah.
It's like if you struggle with same-sex attraction, that's a battle that I don't want to say I know nothing about, because in the same way that a guy is attracted to another guy, I'm attracted to girls.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, but can you have enough therapy to make you not attracted to girls? Because that's who you're attracted to.
Attraction? I don't know. Probably not. Never.
That's what I'm saying. So my point in bringing all this up, and I appreciate all the conversation because I love having conversations with people like this, you cannot therapy. There's not enough therapy to make a pedophile not attracted to children.
Unless you put a big old therapy sticker on the side of a wood chipper.
I have done that before, but I put a sticker on a wood chipper. But that's my point, is that there's not enough therapy to make a pedophile unattracted to who they're attracted to, which is a child. Like, whether they act on it or not, you might, like you said, maybe then they're not deviant, but is there enough therapy in the world to take away that attraction? No, there's not. So that was my point in that.
Yeah. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. I went off way off the reservation on a tangent.
I appreciate it. No, we don't talk it. People are afraid to talk about this stuff. I appreciate the conversation.
Well, people are afraid. I don't know. They're afraid of being wrong. But they're also afraid of they're afraid of oh, what if people don't like what I say?
Well, here's the fucking reality. People are going to like what you say and people aren't going to like what you say. That's it. That's reality.
What I don't like is people without conviction.
Yes.
That's a much bigger problem than saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like our friend Katie Hobbs up in the governor's office, right? There's a lot of things. Your friend? There's a lot of things that I don't agree with her on. But like other individuals in offices that I just can't stand.
Yeah.
If you're going to do your job, like there is a virtue in that.
Mm-hmm.
There is a virtue that I can respect in that. If you're going to do your job, right? She signed all those bills.
Yep.
It's like,
yep.
I can't say anything about that.
No.
Now, other individuals within the massive government, you know, they're not doing their jobs, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
But
No, totally. And she, like I told you, I mean, they took my award away from me for National Victims of Crimes Rights Week because I was disgusted that she didn't sign one of my bills. You don't know about this?
No.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Because that's absurd that they would take away your award.
Yes, you do. You heard about this.
No, I didn't.
What? Okay, so I'm gonna go back into where we were at. So I had the sex offender registration. I'm sorry, the school notification bill for sex offenders. So in Arizona, only level 2 and level 3 are required to notify the school in the district which they live.
Great.
Nobody goes to school in their district. My kids don't. None of my kids go to school in their district. And back to the level 1, it's all a thing, right? Like it's literally, think of it like a loop-de-loop like line. And the offenders know this because guess what? Their treatment, I don't think it's treatment. I think it's actually the how-to book, how to circumvent the laws that are currently in place.
Right.
Let us tell you what the rules are by really telling you what they're not, kind of thing, you know? And so we had a bill that would require a registered sex offender with parental rights to notify their child's school. So it's a small piece, but it's starting somewhere. We're starting somewhere. And level 1s are more likely to have their kids because of their level. Therefore, they're not on the public registry, and, you know, it keeps going. Well, she had some bipartisan support, not very much, and she vetoed it last year. Well, in January last year, I was contacted by Maricopa County Attorney's Office by Sean Cox. Sean Cox is Steve Twist's wife. Steve Twist is who created the Victims' Bill of Rights in Arizona, which is absolute shit, by the way. So Sean Cox called me and asked me if I would be the keynote speaker for National Victims of Crimes Rights Week in April Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I agreed. Now, Rachel Mitchell, the current Maricopa County attorney.
Was this April?
This was last April.
Last April.
Rachel Mitchell, the current Maricopa County attorney, was the prosecutor on my case in 2006.
Okay.
So she was my prosecutor on my case. When she ran for office, I helped with her campaign. I thought she was going to help me with bills for victims, and she was literally nowhere to be found at all. And so Hobbs vetoed the school notification bill. What's so funny is I am never on Twitter, X, whatever it's called. And Hobbs vetoed it. I have a much bigger Instagram following, and even that's not that big. But I tweeted, Governor Hobbs has vetoed SB 1253. I am disgusted. Thank you, Senator Champ, for sponsoring this bill. That's it. That was the tweet. And I had a picture on there, my default picture that I use for everything, that said Governor Hobbs prioritizes protecting pedophiles' identities over innocent children in schools. Would you say that's fact?
I mean, that's
pretty much what it is. I just called it for what it is. The next day, Sean Cox called me with Maricopa County Attorney's Office and told me that because I spoke out in opposition against an elected government official, Katie Hobbs, they were not comfortable having me share the stage with her. Therefore, my keynote speaker offer was rescinded, and they took away my award. How did you not hear about this? It was on national news.
I think I was getting married at the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, then, okay.
I was on my honeymoon.
Fair enough. Okay, that makes sense. But it was a whole thing. And then they forbid me from going to the event. We held a press conference at the legislature. And I was like, if you by stripping me of this award and this keynote speaker offer, you may have silenced me on your stage, but by doing so, you have amplified my voice on another platform.
How did they not see the irony in it, though?
Oh, the best part? The theme was elevate, engage, and enhance survivor voices.
How do they not see the irony in that? How do they not say yeah, so at our Elevate speech rally where you're going to win an award, we're actually going to uninvite you, take away your award, and you're no longer speaking.
Because I said I was disgusted.
Because you used your voice.
Yeah, and everybody should be disgusted. So they actually, I didn't go, but a bunch of people went. There were some crazy things that were done. Because it was a free event, so people were going in and reserving all the tickets and with no intention of going. I had no idea until after. But they kept my name on the invitation, and it was a whole thing. But they, by doing that, even if I would have been on stage there and she would have vetoed it, I wouldn't have said a fucking word to her. You know what I would have said? Thank you for signing the amendments to Kayleigh's law. That's it. That's all I need to say. Because at the end of the day, what did she do?
Well, you're a pro.
Yeah. I have nothing else to say to you.
You are a pro. You know how to be professional and just lock it up.
Yeah. There's no reason.
Lock it in. I don't have anything to say.
Then why would I converse with her? I will thank her for what she did, which was sign the amendments, just as I would thank her for signing the amendments. And so that happened. I haven't spoken to Rachel Mitchell since. I will probably never speak to her again, because how do you claim you're for victims and victims? Know what she's not talking about right now? Victims' rights. How can you say that you're for victims when you just did this to one of your victims? And then you know what she did? She moved my case to Pinal County.
Honestly, that might be a good move.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's see who the county attorney over there is. Kent Volkmer. Yeah. Kent Volkmer is a great guy. Mm-hmm. Ross Teeple running for Pinal County Sheriff over there. Great guy. Yep. A lot of work getting done over there.
Yeah, there's a good sheriff over there, I hear.
Soon to be senator.
So, that's what happened. So that whole thing happened. And my point is, I don't have anything to say to these people. You don't have to always say something. I nothing to say. I will never, whatever. But, she is and then what the craziest part, Kate, is she signed the same bill this year. She just signed it.
So she actually did sign the bill.
She signed it this year.
Later.
She vetoed it last year and she signed it this year.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Yeah. But had that not happened, I wouldn't have known who Rachel Mitchell really is. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have seen the true colors of all these people that claim they're for victims' rights that are not. They're for themselves and their pockets and whatever else. Right. So everything happens for a reason. And I will say, and this kind of goes in what we were originally talking about before we got on, that school bill I put 2 years into, I do so much behind the scenes work. No one will ever see it. And I can't put all of it on social media, and I don't want to put all of it on social media, but I spend hours and hours and hours, and I can't tell you how many emails, and have painful meetings with Democrats who are repulsive to me, because it is critical that we sit down and have these conversations about the actuality of not only the current laws, but what this new bill would do. And if they don't have an understanding, why would they vote yes? So when I meet with them, and I don't have short meetings, I am able to thoroughly explain and then now whip their votes to get their support. And that's exactly what I have done for the school notification bill, which took 2 years, and look at everything, the fallout that happened from that. So I was able to do that and get complete bipartisan support for that bill this year. Complete bipartisan support.
Wow.
And then the DCAC bill, I had almost all Democrats on board. So I say that because there's so much behind the scenes work that's going on. So it's not like I'm just posting on social media, like resharing a story. I'm writing the policy. I'm having the meetings. I'm showing up to testify. I'm doing all of that work, and then I'm sharing it on social media. So
social media is the smallest part of it.
Oh yeah. Social media is so small. I hate social media.
Well, and that's what's pretty remarkable as well, is it's, like we talked, like when we first started, how many people are actually shaking and moving and actually creating the change that they want. Like, be the change you want to see in the world. Like,
no, what they mean is post the change you want to see in the world. That's what they really mean. Post the change, because they're not doing it. And the actuality versus, and the perception versus, what they're really doing. What are they really doing? I mean, you can portray whatever you want on social media. You can make it out to be whatever you want. But what are you actually doing with that? So, not a lot. Most people are not doing a lot.
Well, most people just can't be bothered to upset their lives, their routines, their comforts in order to affect a situation, whatever it is.
No, and like you said earlier, they don't want to feel like they can't, or they don't want the, how did you say it?
The risk of being wrong.
Yes. Okay, so can we, and it's not to get into like abortion, but did you see my post yesterday about it and what's happening in Arizona?
No, I did not see your post yesterday.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Well, it's a reel, so
it's a
not
reel?
a post. Yeah.
Okay, we'll pull it up real quick.
Because I pissed a lot of people off. That's because they don't listen.
Let's see. If you pull it up before I do, you can probably... All right, here we go. Show me which one it is.
This one.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to let it load a little bit.
This is not a bad thing, and I am 100% pro-life, and I want to explain to you why Governor Hobbs signing this repeal is not a bad thing for the state of Arizona. Now, this is going to piss some people off because they're not going to take time to actually understand what's going on, and they're going to say, well, you can't be pro-life and you can't be pro-abortion all at once. And you're right, you can say that, but you need to look at the reality and the actuality of the current situation that Arizona is in. Now, in 2022, Arizona passed a law that put a 15-week ban on abortion. In 1973, when the Supreme Court issued Roe v. Wade, the initial law from 1864, the original one, actually had an injunction placed on it. The law from 1864 made abortion in nearly all instances illegal. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Supreme Court ruled to reinstate the law from 1864. Here's what's not being talked about. If this hadn't been repealed and brought back to the 15-week ban, the Democrats were going to put forth a ballot initiative which would have allowed an abortion up to birth, and then that would have been enshrined in our Constitution. That is terrifying, because here's the reality. Abortion is not going anywhere. That's just what's happening. It breaks my heart and it makes me so sad. And the polling for pro-abortion is at 70%. So whether you like it or not, Arizona was looking at either a 15-week ban or a full-term abortion. And that would be awful. I would not want to risk this going to the ballot. This is not...
Wow. That's a good take on that.
Do you understand what's happening? Like, for real?
Yeah.
It's a lot. And people are ripping me apart.
Well, what's hilarious is who people were ripping apart over it, with like Carrie Lake and all that, all the stuff she was putting out with her campaign. But
okay, here's the thing. We are all entitled to our opinions, right? That is part of why we live in America, freedom of choice. And I am pro-life. Most people don't know this about me. I had a baby in high school. I had my oldest daughter my senior year. Someone in my family scheduled for me to have an abortion. It was not an option for me. I don't believe in that. I could never do it. I don't believe in that. I think there's not enough support for moms, especially younger moms or, unplanned pregnancies and things. That's the whole thing. What I look at, I am not interested in headline catchers. I am not interested in half-ass bullshit policy. I'm interested in actual solutions, and I'm interested in the actuality of the situation. So with this whole topic and why I wanted to bring up not abortion, I'm so sick of people looking at what is being portrayed versus what the actuality is. Now, in 2022, Nancy Bartow had a bill that put a 15-week ban on abortion. Okay, if I had it my way, there would be no such thing.
right.
But this isn't Burger King, and I don't get to have it my way. So even if we had a full ban on abortion in Arizona, where would people go?
California.
Exactly. Newsom already pulled money aside to bring pregnancies from California for abortions. So abortion is not going anywhere. That's the reality. In our lifetime, forever, abortion has been a thing and it will be a thing. So we can ban it if we want. And yes, we would be narrowing the gap, as I always say. But guess what? They're just going to go 4 hours away or go down to Mexico and get it done. So we put the 15-week ban. I still think that's too far. I think it's awful. But it was better than what we had. So when Roe v. Wade was overturned, then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled to lift the injunction on the 1864 full abortion ban. Okay, well, that's not a good thing either, because what did we do? We just gave the Democrats or the opposing side the opportunity to bring forth a ballot initiative that would allow abortion up till birth.
Right.
Okay. We're talking about specifically moderates, okay? and let's say abortion's not their biggest topic and they don't really give a shit, are they going to be more likely, is it fair to say, to vote for the ballot initiative, even if it's up to birth, to give someone the option to have an abortion, or are they going to vote no?
They probably just won't vote.
If they absolutely had to.
Oh. They wouldn't care. They would just be like, all right, do what you want.
So they would vote yes or no?
They probably vote yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Like, so we're only looking at the extremes in this. And so we had 4 Republicans who voted to repeal the 1864 abortion law, meaning now it's diverted back to the 15-week ban. Okay. So the Democrats will still put forth a ballot initiative allowing abortion up to birth. But because we have repealed and we now have the 15-week ban, are people going to be more likely to vote no to allow abortion up to birth? Or are they going to say, why would I vote yes on this when we already have it? You can have an abortion up to 15 weeks.
Right.
It's the safest thing to do. So to say, well, you're just giving up, and someone commented and it was like, would you just give up and walk away if it was victims' rights? This is the reality of what we're working with. No one wants to talk about the reality and the actuality.
Well, you're playing chess, not checkers.
Yes.
It's chess, not checkers.
It is. And I know it's like a lot, and I maybe didn't make sense. Did I make sense?
You did.
Okay. So they're still going to bring it forward on the ballot. But because we now have an option, even though I don't think we should, well, this is America, so fucking whatever. Like, that's not my choice. Like, it's not what I would want. That's not my opinion. But I would rather have that 15-week ban in place where people would vote no for the ballot initiative than have the 1864 no abortion at all, and then people vote yes because that is the only option.
Right.
That's what I would rather have. Just like the Democrats would rather have the 15-week ban than the 1864 no abortion. So it's where I get frustrated is people are only looking at the headlines or what someone they respect or value or admire or whatever, an influencer or even an individual, what their opinion is, instead of looking at the facts and actuality of the situation or the likely outcomes, if you will.
Yeah. Well, no one's looking at the political impacts. Yeah. Nobody's looking at the political strategy or impacts or anything like that. They just see they entrench themselves in party lines. Yeah. That is what they do. Yeah. They entrench themselves in party lines, and then they just kind of let it ride. They're like, okay, I'm on the right, so I am zero tolerance, or I'm on the left, so I kill babies or whatever. Yeah. And I just think it's so important to look at because what the laws are portrayed to be is not what they actually are. And that we see a lot of misinformation, a lot of headlines, false headlines. There was was it Louisiana, the castration? Did you see that? Mm-mm. Oh my gosh. There was a rapist. He's 54, who was sentenced to 50 years and physical castration. Nice.
No, I think that's stupid.
You think that's stupid?
Yeah. Why do I think it's stupid?
Well,
or which part?
Let's see. Well, the castration part doesn't necessarily affect his ability to abuse.
100%.
And it also sets a precedent that the government can chemically castrate or physically castrate people.
Yeah, and it's so I saw this story come out and everyone's like, Louisiana's leading the way, and I'm like, wait a minute. Louisiana's not leading the way. Yeah. I'm going to tell you why. So everything's twofold, I think. But so it appears that, this man's been sentenced to physical castration. Like, yes, go after these rapists and cut off their dicks, even though it's testicles. So what people don't do is they don't go look at the actuality and the policy, where that's what I default to. So this man was sentenced to 50 years, hard time. He can't petition for early release or anything like that. Okay, so he'll be 104 when he gets out. Now, under Louisiana law, and I could pull the statute, I put it in my reel because that's how I roll. They are only required to physically castrate no later than a week before release.
So in 50 years.
Yes.
In 49 years and 51 weeks.
And because they don't have to, so the reason that they put the physical or / chemical castration was to be a deterrent from them from sexually, or, acting upon their sexual desires or whatever. Well, they're not, why would they physically castrate him while he's in prison?
To make him prettier for the other inmates?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. They're not going to physically castrate him in prison, because then they're going to have to pay for it. And then they're going to have to take care of him. And then they're going to have to fulfill all his medical needs. And there's no children in prison. So why they're not going to physically castrate him? They're not required to physically castrate him under the law until a week before his release in 50 years when he's 104 and 6 feet underground. So, but people are all excited because they're thinking, oh, Louisiana. No. It's not going to happen.
So they just did it for the headline.
100%. 100%.
That's not a bad headline.
No, but it's not the actuality. So then people, here's the problem is when we put things like that forward, people, the everyday average people get excited because they think, oh, look, we're doing something. No, we're not. You're misleading people into thinking that there's actual consequences when the actuality is there's not. Just like, it's different, but the abortion thing, they're making it seem like it's all or nothing. The actuality is it's not all or nothing. That's what they're putting it out. But people don't want to go in and do their own research and educate and learn and look at what is really happening versus what the parties are saying or what the person is saying. And so I like to go into that. But an actual law would be, oh, he was sentenced. Under law, we have 1 week post sentence to physically castrate this defendant. That would be a better written law.
Sure. Instead of 1 week from release.
Prior to his release when he's 104.
Maybe if we get enough letters written in, we can get him released sooner. I don't know.
Maybe. Or maybe we can get him castrated in prison, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
so
he'll probably get stabbed anyways.
But maybe they protect those guys now in prison. They're protected. They're not in Gen Pop.
Yeah.
So, we live in a world that protects these guys.
I'm sure there's a reason for that because, again, like, what's the taxpayer burden of having to deal with inmates that are getting stabbed up all the time?
Yeah, because the inmates will deal with the chomos. And so, yes, it's all a thing. But my point in all of that was we live in a world right now, especially with social media, that portrays things in a very
it's not like rose-colored glasses. It's like roller coaster glasses or something like that. It's like make it extreme.
Yes, and then people just believe it and they don't want to understand. And then you can only get so much info out in a 90-second reel, or you can only get so much in a post. And that's why I always appreciate these conversations, because you can really dig into it and talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's, especially with what's happening today, like in the climate of 2024, you really can't dig enough into a lot of these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're so interrelated too. Like, you have the legal side of things, which you've been the Joan of Arc, you've been leading the charge as far as like setting legal precedent and making laws and all this stuff, not just in Arizona, but across the country.
Yeah, I'm trying.
But then you also have like the actual victim impacts, the social impacts, the community impacts that are felt but overlooked or ignored. You have the preventative measures. You have all the there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
And so many things that people it's not even that people don't see, it's just that they're refusing to look at.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot. It's in every way it's a lot. So
if you were to leave people with 3 things in, we'll say, getting active, if you want to see in the change that you want to see, getting active, preventative, and support for victims, what would you leave it at?
That's a lot of questions. Getting active. I think as far as getting active, especially in our world today and how it is, you have to actually get involved. Resharing on social media and posting is not getting involved. You're actually like, you're not really doing anything. I say, awareness without action is like planting a seed and not watering it. Like you have to actually get involved. You have to actually do your own research. You have to actually show up. And I think showing up is a huge part of it, just in general. And find something that you're passionate about. We cannot do everything. We can't be involved in everything. So find something that you're passionate about and find a way to actively get involved. There's so many different ways to get involved to make a difference in our world. You don't just have to, I choose to get involved with policy, and you can get involved in so many different ways. Preventative, was that the other one? Preventative. And
how do we prevent victims from happening?
Well, we're never going to prevent victims from happening, unfortunately. I don't like the whole end movement and sexual abuse, and it's never going to end. I'm a realist, and it's not going to end. So what can we do to be preventative? We can, first of all, start with educating our children at a young age. I think along with the educating, it's making them feel comfortable and like they can talk to us and share things with us, because by opening that door, we're creating that space and that comfort for them to know that if the little things matter, then the big things matter. And, not everybody has kids. So what can we do to be preventive? We can, awareness does matter and it is important, but just be more not turning a blind eye. People turn a blind eye so often because they don't want to get involved. We have to get involved. You have to get uncomfortable. And so if you see something that feels uncomfortable, just bringing it to the attention of wherever you're at. But I think preventative work is hard. I think understanding that things aren't always as they look or what you think. Back to the scary guy in the van. That's not who you need to be always looking out for. What about the charming narcissist? Preventative. Don't just trust a title or an organization or an entity. Sexual abuse is happening wherever you are. Sex crimes are happening wherever you are. But I think the preventative piece is really, it's a hard one. I also think with policy, we need to start being more proactive and less reactive, and that will help with preventing sex crimes from being as prominent as they are. Because if we can have stricter laws that actually are enforced, I believe that would be a deterrent. Right now, they just get a slap on the wrist. So preventative is a little rough. And then what was the last one?
Support for victims.
Supporting victims. Man, whether you know it or not, we all know a lot of victims, and some people will share and some people never will. The reality is they say it's 1 in 4 in every 68 seconds an American is sexually assaulted.
Wow.
And every 9 minutes it's a child. And sex crimes are also the most underreported. So keep that in mind. Last year in California, in 2023, there was 18,000 rapes reported. 18,000.
That's it?
That's a lot. That's rape. Not sex crime, not all sex crimes. That's just rape. Rape is the least common sex crime. Sexual abuse, sexual molestation, sex trafficking. So rape is the most is the lesser of all the sex crimes. 18,000. That's a lot and they say 1 in 4. So it's just, if you think about it, like, and how many report,
right?
We'll never know the full number. But that's a lot. I think in 2022, I don't know that I've looked at 23. There was like 3 million child sex crimes that were reported in America.
That were reported?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I just give you an idea, but supporting victims, every victim needs different kind of support and things, but I think listening and letting them know that they matter. And that's why when I got that phone call in 2020 notifying me that he was petitioning to have the terms of his probation lifted, and I was on that roller coaster of, do I go to court or do I stay home? What do I do? I kept saying to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking about this? Why am I even giving this my time? Because you still matter, Kayleigh. That's why you're doing this, because you still matter. And that's how my organization and my whole thing got started, with because you still matter. And I'm fighting for you because you still matter. And that's my part in this for the later trauma. And the policy side is that I'm trying to fix things, doing my best to fix things because you still matter. And then I'll never stop fighting for you because you still matter. And so the support looks different for everybody, but yeah.
How can people support you, Kayleigh, and everything that you're doing with Kayleigh's Law, with your organization? Where can they find you at? How can they support you?
Well, thank you for asking that. Honestly, on my website, I have is becauseyoustillmatter.com, and I have all my policy work on there. I have all the information regarding Kayleigh's Law on there and what states I should be filing in 2 more states this year. So, because I really want to get this passed nationwide, but my website is great to get all the information and find out how you can support. I also have 1412 Clothing Co., which is all Team Wood Chipper, the only solution. And it's just some merch to, support my mission.
What does 1412 mean?
1412 was the initial bill number for Kayleigh's Law.
That's all. That's cool.
So that's where that came from. And just a little bit to help. I mean, I like supporting other people's merch, and I have a couple things. Like I have Team Wood Chipper Only Solution, Mark 942. Got some of that going. But my Team Wood Chipper flag is my favorite for sure.
Yeah.
And so I just have that. That's always, I appreciate that. And then I don't buy cheap shirts. So, cause I like comfy and what I would wear, and a couple different hats. So that's great too. And then I do share a lot on Instagram, with, again, the reality and the actuality of what's going on. I don't just share fluffy news, or headlines. So.
What's your handle there on Instagram?
Oh, the Kayleigh Kozak is Instagram. So,
Awesome.
And that's my biggest platform. And, these opportunities to be able to talk thoroughly and more in depth, I really appreciate them. So thank you.
Well, it's
for
important
your time.
stuff. It is very important stuff. And it's people that people are uncomfortable with it. People don't want to face a lot of these realities. And,
No.
It's interesting. People are, it's so weird. Every other animal in the world has predators, right? There's something out there that's hunting them, that's trying to kill them. And I think that's why humans have such an affinity with like Discovery Channel Shark Week, right? Because there's this freaking fish in the water that's going to eat you, right? And you wonder why there's this huge surge in popularity with like true crime podcasts and Netflix and all that. And it's because, right, there's a predator out there that is hunting us right here, right now. And you can't even see it. You can't detect it. And like people like you are doing everything that they can to just be a little bit ahead of that guy.
Oh, I'm trying. I never thought of it like that. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to think on that.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that.
What's the only thing that can hunt a human? Other than, a couple leopards down in Africa from time to time.
And they're not even actively hunting
a couple Bengal
human.
tigers back in the day. But
that's interesting. I never thought about that.
And, like when you look at true crime, like how many, you can't swing a dead cat by the tail without hitting 50 different documentaries about Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
And it's just so like.
Yeah. But those are really great examples of how predators work how people, they didn't think that they ever, like not them, they would never.
Right.
So those are old examples that are good. Look at how far things have come today.
Now we have a completely different platform with the internet and social media and grooming has changed. All the things that lead up to predation have completely changed. And, number one predator on earth walking on 2 legs over here.
I never thought about that.
Hunting
That's crazy.
us. Well, Kayleigh, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And you guys listening, if you want to support Fear Not Do Right and the Fear Not Do Right podcast, go to fearnotdoright.com and pick you up some merch because we got a bunch of it. If you want to follow us on Fear Not Do Right on social media, on Instagram, and then at FNDR_USA on Twitter.
Yes.
We'll be posting some of this content up there. And until next time, guys, fear not and do right.
Yep.
Thanks, Kayleigh. There we go.